Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Fans in Motion podcast, the only podcast that I like to say you didn't know you needed. I say to my friend Josh, looking back at me, wait until tomorrow. Let time pass away. Don't wait until tomorrow because wasting time will never get you made. Say hello, Josh.
Yo, 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 yo. What's up, homies and homettes out there in the Night Ranger world? Do we have a very special episode for you this week?
Yes, and that was not a Night Ranger lyric. Josh, I mean, if you want to give the scoop on who that was from.
All right. So this week we are talking to the one and only Mr. John Nymann from YNT, one of the great rock groups from the Bay Area besides Night Ranger. So John kind of falls into the Night Ranger world. Let's just do currently, because he has a new record out called Made in America. And there's a song on there called Fly Angel Fly that Brad Gillis is on. And now I'm a big YNT fan. If you watch the podcast, you know, I'm not talking out of school or anything. It's widely known. So I'm a, Dave Minneketti, John Nymann fan to begin with. But when I saw Brad was on there, I was like, well, I'll get it. And we got something to talk about on the podcast. Got the record, and I was blown away by how good this was.
Nice.
Just good written songs. If listen to this podcast, there's a lot of stuff that we talk about, but you will see me just rave again and again about how good this record is, because it is.
Is it melodic rock types? Is it in that same vein of YNT and Night Ranger, or is it?
No.
Is he really on his own here?
He's a little bit. It's a little bit everywhere, which is sometimes not good, but this is. I mean, Happy's got a whole horn section. Made is just a good, like, just rock song.
That's where I lifted that lyric from, by the way. That's Made.
Yep. Give Love Back is just a good up-tempo rock song. Losing Track is like bluesy. There's a real big pop song in Fall in Love. See You in Heaven is a good. I mean, I find myself singing these songs, and I've had this for a while, and I haven't really talked about it because I've been working on getting John on the podcast. And then, if you know anything about what's going on in the YNT world, Dave Minneketti having cancer and going through it, and he's on the mend now, but that kind of put some stuff back. So we've been talking for a few months to do this, but anyway, so he's on this new record. Brad Gillis plays some of the solo. Now he goes back all the way back to the 70s of the Bay Area scene. And we're going to get into that. So while Rubicon is playing, he's playing in a band called Mile High. Okay. Eric Martin from Mr. Big is in a band called Kid Courage. They know each other, decide, hey, let's form a band together. They form a band called 415, which eventually becomes the Eric Martin Band. All right. And he'll tell you the whole reason why. Journey's manager is involved and everything. It's a really cool story. But you get to see, he tells the story about how, Rubicon, then Ranger, Night Ranger, and 415 and Eric Martin Band, they're coming up together.
Yeah.
And, we're playing the same clubs and we see each other all the time. And you got a record deal? Yeah, we got a record deal. And everything's, building up together. And one album takes off, one doesn't. Yeah. And he talks about, wow, I'm on American Bandstand and all this stuff to, a short time later, the band gets dropped and he has to go through this. And it really parallels David Lauser, drummer for Sammy Hagar's story, because he gets, if you guys remember the Lauser story, when Sammy Hagar gets with Van Halen, suddenly Lauser's without a job. Remember, he becomes an electrician, has really good money, and he's like, I got to stop this or I'll never get back into music. John has the same thing. And you know what's really funny is the whole Sammy Hagar getting with Van Halen comes around because the person he teams up with was the bass player, Bill Church from Sammy's band. So they get together. Something happens outside of the music world with Bill Church. He's like, hey, will you help me with this? And John's like, I have no clue anything about that. But John helps him, and John has made that into his second, really his first career. It's really cool story. But it shows you these ups and downs and
Yeah.
in the music world, to where he gave up guitar for some time. And then, his buddy Eric Martin calls him like, hey, come on tour with me, or, and then Y&T, he went to high school with the Y&T guys. So
Gosh.
he's got this whole story, and I'm going to split it up into two parts. So you'll get, some of the Bay Area scenes. He saw Rubicon. So he tells you like his
He's
first
got some
time
stories.
seeing Jack Blades and Brad Gillis, in Rubicon. He'll talk about, Night Ranger and them kind of coming up together. And if you remember, there's this YouTube clip from them in San Francisco, Night Ranger, like 1984. And it's before they go on stage. So it's like one of these rare interviews from 1984. Jeff Watson, Brad Gillis, and I think Jack. But also part of that is Eric Martin band's opening up. So we'll post that clip, but you got Eric Martin and John Nymann in that as well. So yeah, you got John Nymann's past with Rubicon, Night Ranger, and then for the last almost 20 years, he's been the guitarist for Y&T, which if you've never been, gotten into Y&T, you're missing out. Just go listen to Mean Streak, Midnight in Tokyo, and Dave Minneketti. I've always said I would love to see Y&T and Night Ranger perform, because they're these two classic groups that are still on top. Y&T just still on top, sounds good. Night Ranger still on top, sounds good. So yeah, it was a really great interview. I highly suggest get this, get the CD or the vinyl. He just got the vinyl in. I already ordered me a copy, and cassette.
Wow, cassette.
Yep. And I'm telling you, I mean, if you just like good writing and lyrics, like, you guys know I'm not a big lyric guy. The lyrics are good. They're, I mean, it's just like, I find myself reading like, man, it's like, it's just on top of how well written the songs are. So without further ado, here's part one of John Nymann from Y&T.
Christ, I didn't know better when my heart was black. You gotta give love back to the right one who deserves more than someone.
Welcome to another episode of Fans of Motion, the Ultimate Night Ranger podcast. And as my buddy Andy would say, the podcast you didn't know you needed. On the in the bullpen here with me is the one and only gentleman and a scholar, Mr. John Nymann from Y&T, and he's going to take us back a little bit into the 1970s, early 80s to the Bay Area. Probably, some nice. Is there beaches in San Francisco? I've never been.
Yeah, there's beaches.
All right.
It's awfully cold.
All right, well, never mind. So driving the hot rods, listening to the loud music, and going out at night and seeing some Rubicon, I think. And he's going to tell us some stories there. And we're just going to talk about all kinds of 1970s and early 80s Bay Area stuff. So, John, now, were you born and raised in California? Where does your story start?
I was born in Oakland, California, and lived in the Bay Area all my life. Not now. I moved away, but yeah, I lived there up until about 5 years ago, all in and around San Francisco Bay Area, up in Marin County and down into San Jose even.
So were you Raiders or 49ers?
Well, I've never been a big sports guy. I mean, I'm just going to tell you, I'm Oakland A's and 49ers.
All right.
Probably. I mean, I don't know why. The only reason when we were, just fast forward into the 80s when 415 Eric Martin Band was with the Journey, under the Herbie Herbert umbrella. Herbie Herbert was the biggest 49er fan, right? During that dream era, when Joe Montana just got in. And so his whole office was decorated with 49er stuff. He was like the biggest cheerleader for the 49ers. He was always going. So I got swept up into being like, if you're not a 49er fan, you're not allowed in the office, kind of thing. So,
what's funny is Brad is the exact opposite of you, to where he is the Raiders. And then
he's Alameda,
Raiders and the Giants. So,
really? Okay.
Yeah. So he's got those reverse. So, you're growing up in California, life's good. How does that musical interest start? Was you in school and playing in the band? Did you have an older brother, had an electric guitar? How does all that start off with you?
Well, my older brother had to play guitar and had a band, and he used to practice at the house, like jamming in the front room. And I was 6 years old, 7 years old, watching all this. And I wanted to be a drummer, to tell you the truth. I used to sit there next to his drummer with a magazine and a couple of pencils and pretend it was a snare drum. And when I got to be about 10 years old, I asked my mom, if I could get a drum set. She says, that's never going to happen. So just forget about it. There's not going to be drums in this house. So play guitar like your brother. So I did. And so I'm glad I did, because, I have a drum set now and I do play drums on the side. But I'm glad I became a guitar player. And so my brother got me started. And his band, I know you'd mentioned you knew who Mile High was, my first band. That was the name of actually my brother's band. Him and his buddies were sitting around smoking a joint and watching a game from Denver, from Mile High Stadium. And they thought, Mile High, man, that's a cool name. We should name our band that. So it was Mile High HI. And we, as that band disintegrated, he asked me to join the band with a couple of my younger friends. And then he left the band and we kept the name, and that's how that all started. We started writing our own songs and away we went. So my brother was my biggest influence. And my album is dedicated, my solo album, Made in America, is dedicated to my brother Bjorn.
Yeah, I saw that. So where the name, his name, is it pronounce that for him?
It's Bjorn.
All right, because I'm going to do what family history, like where does that name come from? Because that's a lot different than John.
Yeah, well, my parents, or my mom and dad and my two oldest brothers were born in Norway. And so I'm 100% Norwegian, and my whole family's from there. And my dad was a merchant seaman, and his father was also. And back during World War II, my grandfather's ship was torpedoed by the Germans outside of New York, and he got, the ship sunk, and they saved the guys, and he made it there, and he made it out to Minnesota, where he had a cousin or something, because he couldn't get a ship, World War II. And she said, you should go out to California, because there's big shipping out there. They got, San Francisco. And he's like, okay. So he got on a train and he made it out there, and he fell in love with the Bay Area, and he bought a house in Oakland. And then he wrote a letter to my father and said, you need to transplant your family over here. This is the place you want to be, California. It's like, this is the rain, perfect, and so thank God that happened. So I ended up in California. But
so you're
my father's name is Sigvald. My mother's name is Elsa. And then we got Rolf and Bjorn. And then my parents move over here, and Alice and John are born in Oakland. Can't get any more American sounding than that.
So the California life starts with a shipwreck.
Yeah.
Basically. When I see, Bjorn, I automatically think of ABBA. And that's why I was like, all right, so there's, I think they're Swedish or something. So
Yeah, Bjorn
yeah.
Borg, the tennis player from Sweden.
Yeah.
He's another famous Bjorn.
So,
so I just want to tell you that people always say Bjorn.
Well, that's how I would pronounce it. That's when
but my family always said Bjorn. So that's I'll whenever I had heard people go Bjorn Borg, I was like, I think it's Bjorn Borg, but whatever. That's just my Scandinavian family.
So I was reading somewhere. So when you're in high school, there's a couple musicians maybe that are a little bit older than you that you kind of looked up to by the name of Dave Minneketti and Leonard Hayes. Is that correct?
Yes, it was at Leonard Hayes and I went to the same high school. He was a year older than me. And that's where I first I knew Leonard actually since he was, we were 12 and 11. He had a little surf band called the Mustangs, and his guitar player, Randy Hanners, went to elementary school with me. And so I was introduced to that band back then. And then when I hooked up with Leonard in high school, and he had, was now like a John Bonham style, big badass drummer, and he brought Dave Minneketti to school and jammed it after school one day. And I just was in awe of these guys, just going, I can't believe how great Leonard sounds. And this Dave Minneketti guy he brought, wow, these guys are awesome. And so I went up to Dave and introduced myself, and we became buddies right, from that moment on. I was like hanging out at his house. He lived 3 blocks from me. So Leonard lived 2 blocks from me, and Dave lived 3 blocks from me. So
when you see you're that young, they're that young, can you see that talent even then?
I was 16, I guess 15 and a half, 16 when I first heard them play in the high school cafeteria. and I was blown away. I mean, I couldn't believe how good they were at 18 years old. I mean, whatever, they were as good as bands I went to see at Winterland in San Francisco. I mean, they were like humble pie. I mean, maybe they weren't that good, but they were on their way to be that,
But you could tell there was something different.
They were special.
Yeah.
They had special talent it totally made me just want to go home and practice my guitar. After seeing Dave play like that, I mean, even back then he was singing and playing, better than anybody I knew, or that had been experienced. So it was a big influence on me.
Let's say, it's Saturday night, you're 15 years old. What are some of your go-to records you got in your record collection back then? What's some really stuff that influenced you?
When I was, right around 14, 15, there was a neighbor of mine who played guitar also, and Roger Clisby. He had a gold top Les Paul, and he playing Eric Clapton licks in front of me, one day when I was over his house, and I was like, what? That is what I want to learn. And so he goes, I'll come over to your house. And so he gave me a couple of lessons and got me on my way. And he gave me 2 albums to study. Like he said, you should listen to this music. And he gave me the Who Live at Leeds and the Johnny Winter blues, progressive blues experiment album. And so he was showing me a lot of blues licks because they're simple to play. And I don't mean simple, but I mean, it was more basic, slower guitar bending notes. And he was just showing me how those blues patterns work, and then listening to Johnny Winter. And then, but the Who Live at Leeds, I don't know. He said, you should he tried to expose me to some really good rock music. I'd never heard the Who. And so I was blown away. I mean, when I heard Pete Townsend on Live at Leeds, I said, that's what I want to do. I want to play guitar like that. I want to have big power chords and play really loud. And so I was the biggest Who fan, and I still am to this day.
I've always said, that, I mean, I have bands that are, that I like more, but I've always said Roger Daltrey to me was the perfect vocalist. Like he's got I don't like singers that sing too clean, but so he's got that rasp in his voice, but it's
Right.
not too much. He still can hit, so he's like Robert Plant's just a little bit too clean for me, where, Daltrey's got a little bit of those razors in his voice. And so I've always been a big Roger Daltrey fan. What was your first rock concert that you saw?
First concert was Steppenwolf, and at the Oakland Coliseum, and Three Dog Night, and the Grassroots, and the Flaming Groovies were on the bill. So Three Dog Night was fantastic, of course, and Steppenwolf was fantastic. It was in their heyday, so it was packed, big 14,000 people. So that was pretty. I was 12 years old. That was and that was my first album that I got by my brother for my 12th birthday. Was Born to Be Wild.
Steppenwolf. There you go. Now, was that the show that Three Dog Night recorded their live album at?
I don't know.
There's I think it was it was there in like 1970 maybe. But anyways, there was a live Three Dog Night record there, and I want to say it was like there was a big bill with them with other bands, and they released that. But so when you saw that, was there any rush, like, wow, that's what I want to do, or did it lead to like, okay, I want to see more concerts? How does that impact a 12-year-old seeing Steppenwolf and Three Dog Night?
Well, I mean, I was impressed, of course, but at that time I wasn't really playing guitar. I mean, I think I had a guitar, but I was more interested in girls and motorcycles, and at that point in my life, I wasn't, but I liked music. And I mean, I was just starting my record collection. I had a paper route, and I would take my paper route money and go buy albums, but I still hadn't really gotten into, it took me a while to go see more concerts. So after Steppenwolf, I saw Creedence Clearwater Revival at the same place, Oakland Coliseum, when I was about 14. And then when I got to be about 15, I still didn't drive. I didn't get a car until I was like 17 and a half. So I was riding with buddies over to San Francisco to Winterland to see Humble Pie or The Who or whoever was playing, But that was my concert. It wasn't until after, like, I saw Yesterday, or they weren't called Yesterday and Today yet, or Y&T, but Dave and Leonard play, that I really started getting into music seriously and going to see shows and watching them develop their band, basically.
So you mentioned earlier about Mile High and that being your brother's band, and eventually you joined and your brother left. So was that the first band that you really kind of, I don't want to say took off, but really had a following and something stable that you could play clubs and theaters with?
Yeah, that was we were serious. We were together. Well, I guess I was right after high school. I turned 18, and it seemed like that's when the band started, right as I graduated. And we had so when I was still in high school, I was during my junior year in high school that my brother asked me to join his band, and we played in Alameda at the Alameda Naval Air Station. He had a steady gig there every Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And so I just got swept up into his band. I was playing 4 sets a night at 17 years old and making $125 a week. I was hooked. I go, that's what I want to play. I just want to be a guitar player and playing bands, so he got me going. And then when he left, we decided we wanted to play all original music and write our own songs and try to get a record deal. I mean, that's what Y&T Yesterday and Today did. Watch them do it. So we were following in their footsteps, kind of, to try to do that same thing.
Did you ever have a backup plan? Like, was mom and dad saying, listen, do this for 3 years, and if it don't work out, go to medical school? Or did you know that this is what I want to do and I'm going to make it work? Was there ever that conflict, starting out at a young age, or sometimes being young and dumb is a good thing. You barrel through it, and you follow your dreams.
Well, that's exactly how it went. I followed my dream, and my parents didn't like it, but I did always work. I mean, I got a job right out of high school, just to make some money and pay my way, or buy my own gas, or and moved out on my own. And I always worked a side job somewhere to be able to follow my dream, let's say, to play guitar. But we practiced every night, Mile High. I mean, not on weekends maybe, but we'd go to work all day. We'd come home, go have dinner, go out to the studio, play till 11 o'clock, writing songs, practicing. And we might only get a gig once every couple months, playing here or there, or opening up to somebody, we worked very hard at it, just like all guys back then that I grew up with. We all Y&T practice every day, just like a job, just get in there and grind it out, and wait for the next gig and try to get a gig. And, but I did that for 4 or 5 years with Mile High. Did
Mile High, did that band take off to a point where you guys had steady gigs throughout the Bay Area, or did that lead to its demise, not getting that far?
Well, what happened is we got to a point where we were playing after 4 or 5 years doing it. We had a steady gigs going on. We had a steady club. We played all the Keystones. We played Mabue Gardens. We put on our own local shows at Vets Hall or Weeks Park, or these little venues around Hayward area, and just did it all ourselves. We just that's what you did back then. That's how all the bands got shows. You either put on your own shows or got into a nightclub and established yourself. And we were good. We were a decent band, so most of the time when we got into a club and played, like the Keystones, they go, "Oh, you guys are great. We'll have you back." So we did okay. But our drummer, he got to a point where he just, I don't know, he just walked in one day. He says, "I'm leaving the band." And we were kind of blown away because we were doing pretty good. I'm still at that point, we had already been picked up by Herbie Herbert, who was Journey's manager, and he put us on some shows with Journey. This is prior to Steve
Perry. What year are we talking about right here?
Okay.
What year are we talking about right here?
Oh, 77.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was, I guess Journey had a couple albums out.
Yeah.
Maybe they had got to the third album. I'm not sure next, but right around that time, we got a friend of ours told Herbie, "You got to see this band Mile High." And he came to our studio in Hayward and saw us, and he goes, "God, you guys are really good. I'm gonna put you on some Journey shows." And we were like, "This is great," So things were looking up, but then he left. I mean, Steve Perry came in and he goes, "I really got to focus on Journey right now because we're really trying to make this big turnaround to bring the band into being being a little more commercial success," which worked out for them, of course. But he dropped this. I mean, he said, "I can't work with you right now because I'm focused on them. But if you ever get anything going that you think is great, or, you guys are young, let me know." And so that's a couple of years down. I mean, our drummer left. I took over singing. He was the lead singer. I took over singing lead vocals. And which I didn't really want to be the lead singer, but I mean, I just did it for a while. And then Eric Martin, I know we talked about the Kid Courage connection. Mile High, Kid Courage played Mabue Gardens, San Francisco together. And I was introduced to Eric, seeing him sing, and he loved my band and I loved his voice. And I said, "We should hook up." And we took maybe another year after that, but he called me up and said, "Hey, can I join Mile High?" I said, "Absolutely, perfect timing." So after he joined, we made we got together and we're writing songs, and the band sounded really good. And we made a $50 demo and brought a cassette over to Herbie because I called him up, said, hey, I got something going. You got to hear what we got. And he said, bring it on over. And it's just like a dream come true. Calls me the next day and said, we love it. Not only do I love it, the whole journey love it. We were all in the office. We all listened to it. And even Steve Perry wants to produce you. I was like, can you believe that happened in one day? How excited I was to be like, how did that's like a dream come true when you're a musician, that they go, we love it. And he goes, make another demo. And I said, no problem. And we had 5, we went back in before we even finished that second set of 5 songs. He had already signed us up. And so away we were going with Herbie Herbert and that whole 6-year stint that led up to the Eric Martin Band album,
So Eric Martin joined Mile High.
Yeah.
Kind of. And then did you guys rename that 415?
Yeah, Herbie, it was the 80s, and there was U2 and 707, and I don't know, it was the modern era coming in. He goes, well, let's call it area code 415, so people would know where we were from. And then it became code 415, and then it just became 415. And we played a lot of shows under that moniker, and then we all the way up till our album was done. And then there was a 415 record company out of San Francisco. They kind of had punk rock bands, and they go, you can't use that name. They had copyright written it or something. I don't know. And they said, well, you can't use it because we're 415 Records, and you can't be 415 the band. It's too confusing. So they got a lawyer. And so Herbie said, let's just change the name. And then, Eric being the chief songwriter, main guy, and there was Brian Adams and Eddie Money and a lot of those things going on. And he says, let's just call it the Eric Martin Band. It'll be a band, and we'll come up with a logo. And because we were kind of like, well, wait, this is a band. It's not all about Eric, but at the same time, what are we going to do?
Yeah,
it's your manager. He's saying, this is what we're going to do.
Well, before we get into that change, all right.
Okay.
I want to go back and work up to it with the Night Ranger angle. So you're in the Bay Area. Did you know any of the members of Night Ranger before Rubicon?
Well, I didn't know Brad Gillis like I didn't hang out with him. He lived in Alameda, and I was in Stanley, I was a few towns over, but I'd heard of him, like back then it was like, oh, there's this hot guitar player from Alameda, and so, but I hadn't seen him really play. I just knew the name and knew who he was, and knew that he was another badass guy like Dave Minneketti or something, in from his area. And I think the first time I might have seen him play was with Rubicon in at the old Waldorf.
So you saw,
I can't remember it, it's hard to remember all those gigs back then.
Yeah. But you did see Rubicon at the old Waldorf?
Yes.
What was that like? I mean, because here you got this hot guitarist, but you also got like 3 horns in the band, and that's a little bit different than probably what Mile High's doing, what YNT's doing. When you saw that, were you like, oh, that's cool, or I don't know if that's going to work? What were your thoughts when you saw Rubicon? Do you remember anything like that?
Well, being from Oakland and growing up with Tower of Power, and also playing in the jazz band in high school with the big horn section, I'm a big horn lover,
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why I have horns on my first track on my album. Because I wanted a real horn section. So anyway, I was excited. I mean, I like that style of music. I had their album, but the only thing I remember was how I was just fixed on Jack Blades and Brad Gillis the whole show. I don't even remember the other guys in the band because they were so good and fun to watch and talented. And Jack Blades was like, he was so different than in his, because he was doing slapping his bass,
like almost like Larry Graham and stuff like that.
And so it was I was like, God, that guy's badass. And then when Night Ranger came out, and then he's just lead singing, and now he's just playing with a pick or whatever, I'm like, wow, he's totally turned into a different character, you know.
Yeah,
For the better.
we're lucky that there is a clip of them from Cow Jam 2, and they kind of do this little breakdown, and they got Jack doing that, you know, funky slap bass and stuff. So we're lucky that there is a little bit of footage out there, but yeah, and it's weird because he's not like the lead singer on those records. Yeah, I think he maybe sings one track on each record, but definitely a whole different playing style. Had the big glasses back then, and so do you remember anything like, so you know, you guys got 415, you're getting that going. Do you remember anything around the same time of Ranger? You know, well, I guess it went from stereo to, you know, Ranger, and then they kind of had an issue too, where right before they released their record, they see that there's a country group in Kentucky called the Rangers. So then that's where they add the night in there after one of their songs. Were you aware of anything that they were doing leading up to their first release at the time?
Yes. 415 opened up shows to Ranger. I think it was at the Mystic Theater in Petaluma or the Phoenix Theater, one of those two theaters. And more than once, maybe we played together. And so we kind of, you know, bonded, you know, our two bands, you know, we're like, they dug us, we dug them. And we were like, cool, you know, because they knew who we were, because we're, you know, managed by Journey's management, and they were managed by Bruce
Cohn,
Brothers manager.
Yes. Yeah. He had managed Doobie Brothers.
Yeah, at that time. And so they had it going on, we had it going on. And, you know, I would see Jack Blades, you know, at concerts, and you go, hey dude, man, how's it going? And, you know, did you get a record deal yet? And I go, yeah. And, you know, okay, we got the same lawyer as you. And, you know, he would, you know, we were both, he was just such a cheerleader for what we were doing, and us for them, you know.
Yeah.
Both our records came out around the same time. And we had a song that I wrote called Private Life that the chorus went, don't tell me that you won't love me, or something like that. And I was like, no way. And then they come out with, don't tell me you love me. And not that it didn't matter. I mean, but I was like, okay, well, we can't release that song now because they already did it. And so anyway, our Sucker for a Pretty Face song comes out, and it's on the radio around the same time as their song. And they just shot to the top. And we just went the opposite way. So it was kind of a bummer, because I thought that we both were a good band. We had a chance too. You know, my Eric Martin band was good. That was a good album. Sucker for a Pretty Face. I thought we did.
Yeah, let's go back to where we left off. So you're in this band, and you know, you're all, you know, it's 415. You're striving to make it. You get a record deal. You're recording. This is your big break, 415. How does it feel when they go, hey, we're going to name it, we're going to change the name and call it the Eric Martin Band, and put the focus on him, where he's on the cover? Does that mentally, you know, impact you, you know, like, or is it just like, is it still, you know, internally still one team? What are your thoughts, you know, with when that happened?
Well, you know, we were like 6 years in at that point, maybe, you know, 5 years in, whatever. And we were so close. We lived together, the whole band. We had a band house, and we lived together the whole time, working together, living together. We were like brothers. So it was kind of one for all for one kind of attitude anyway. So people around us were more offended about, like, thought it was, oh, that's not fair. You know, John, it's your band. Mile High was your, you know what I mean? He's doing your band. I go, hey, that doesn't matter. I go, the whole thing is we just got to get this record out and go with it, you know, because it is what it is. I mean, Herbie wanted to make this change, and, you know, he explained, he goes, well, you know, what happens if some of you guys want to leave the band? At least I got it's Eric's the main, you know, character. I don't know, you know, I was like, whatever you want to do at this point, I just want it out. So yeah, it was it irked me a little bit for like 30 seconds. And then I went, oh, let's just move on. But people around me were more offended than the band was.
Is there like a sigh of relief, or, you know, a feeling of accomplishment when you've worked that hard, and then the next thing you know, you're on MTV and you're on American Bandstand, and you could walk into a record store and go, hey, that right there, that's the record I'm on. What's the feeling that you go through when you finally hit what, you know, you perceive as the top of the mountain?
Well, it's a great feeling. I mean, just that, like every band you've ever heard of that's even famous, that, oh man, the first time we heard ourselves on the radio, it was, have you ever seen that thing you do?
Yeah.
Okay. You know how that excitement?
Yeah.
It was like that. We're like, dude, we're on the radio.
Where were you? Do you remember where you first?
Oh, I was probably in Novato, California, where we lived at that time. And
I didn't know if you actually remember the very first time, or.
You know what? I can't be for sure if we were, you know, if it was on the car radio. I'm sure it was. I'm sure we had a station wagon that we cruised around in. It was probably in that, you know. I know I was in a car listening to it. I just remember that driving around. So or someone else's car or whatever, but it was, and I just never forget that I was hearing Night Ranger's song being played too. Both, and they were playing our song quite a bit because we're a local band and we were on the radio a lot. But at that time, there was no knowing what was going to happen as far as record sales. It was just, we were on the radio. And I was just looking forward that we got into the second single, you know, past that, which we never did. Don't Stop was supposed to be the song, which I wish we got into that, because that was a good rocker, a good, you know, kind of AC/DC, kind of punchy.
So the album's released, you know, you got this momentum going. You got some, you know, you got airplay, you know, major release. What was the, and you're, like I said, you guys are touring for this. When was like the first moment? Like that's not how it went. Was it the second single not taking off? Where did the first kind of little hiccup hit with you guys?
Well, it wasn't a little hiccup. It was a major hiccup. So what happened is everything was going along great. The record was selling decently, you know. I mean, it just been out for a few months, you know, but it was doing really well in Japan. It was well on its way to doing, I mean, for a first release, we had sold 10,000 copies, and they were like, that's really good. I mean, for Japan to just all of a sudden sell 10,000 copies. So, you know, we thought that doesn't sound like much at all in the world of million platinum selling records. But they said, no, that's a great start for a foreign country. And then anyway, we, the BAMIs, you know, of that, right? The BAMIs award, Bay Area Music Awards. We ended up getting best debut album for Sucker for a Pretty Face for 1984 and best club band for 1984. So we won 2 BAMIs. We're on High as a Kite. We're on MTV. I think we had already played on American Bandstand by then with Dick Clark, which was just amazing, you know, to be a brand new band with just came out and don't have a single, or don't have a hit. You don't play that show unless you have a hit song. But Herbie Herbert guaranteed Dick Clark that we were on our way. You know, we were in 16 magazine for a whole year, every issue, and they were building us up. I mean, we had a lot of push because of Journey and Herbie. But right after that, the BAMI thing, we get a phone call that we get called into the office with Herbie, and he's pretty much thrown in the towel. We'd lost our record deal. The record company had dropped us by then. And there's a whole nother story that goes with that I don't know if we need to get into, but it didn't have anything to do with us. It was just politics behind Herbie and that whole thing with people in the business. And they dropped us, basically. And Motley Crue was on the same label as us. And they were pushing tattooed rock band, Motley Crue, tattooed guys that look like girls.
Yeah.
And we were nothing like that. And so they were like, you guys don't have any image, we don't hear any hits. We got some John Kolodner to come out and look at us. We had other people come out and look at us. They go, yeah, it's a really good band. And we see they got a good fan base, but we don't hear any hits. So we're passing. So after that happened, Herbie dropped us. And I ended up in Y&T a couple of weeks later.
Well, so
that's another story.
When that happens, so you're working this whole this for years, Mile High, 415, Eric Martin band, and your whole life into it, and then all of a sudden, no record deal, no management. Is there a time where you're like, I mean, how does that, mentally? Does that just, bust you down, or, are you young enough where you just dust it off and like, okay, I'm going on to the next thing? How does that, I mean, to me, it's just like, God, you work the climb all the way up to that top of that mountain, and then just someone pushes you down. How does that impact, what are you going through personally when you get told just all this?
Well, yeah, quite honestly, I mean, I felt just hollow. I mean, I just felt like I'd been gutted because I was riding such a high, hanging out with the Journey, playing shows with Hall & Oates, and I can't even ZZ Top. I don't know, we were playing Joe Walsh. We were playing the Oakland Coliseum. We're playing A Day on the Green. We're playing every venue, Cal Palace, every venue in the Bay Area, Concord Pavilion, opening up to all major acts, and as 415 mostly. I mean, but before the album came out, and just opening up to Journey on the Escape tour. I mean, with Billy Squier and Hall & Oates, Mountain Air Festival. We were high as a kite, loving it. Okay, so you can imagine the feeling when it just the rug gets pulled out from under you, and you're going, oh man, I thought we were gonna make it. I mean, I really thought, because I'm not bragging about, I thought we were a great band, and I thought Eric Martin had one of the best voices out there. So I figured, how can we lose? And we had good songs, but that doesn't really, we didn't have good enough songs. I mean, that's basically what it comes down to. If you don't have the song, it's hard to. Yeah. Anyway, that's another story. But yeah. But anyway, yeah, I felt really down. All of us were, just down, and we were going like, and Eric. Anyway, so when the last show we played at Wolfgang's in San Francisco is our farewell show. Band's breaking up. It's our last show, and Herbie came up to me and said, on a side note, away from the other guys, he goes, we want to keep you, John, with Eric. So, that we want to keep you two together and keep moving the band and keep going with you guys and try to get another record deal, going a different direction. And I was so upset at that point about what went down and just the whole thing and the music business, and hadn't made a penny, still starving. And I'd already been approached by, I think it's that Y&T had come up to me. I mean, I went and saw Y&T play, and they said, dude, I'm so sorry your band's breaking up, but if you want to come on the road with us, we could sure use you to be a side guy, play keyboards and sing. And of course I loved Minneketti, and I said, absolutely. So when Herbie said that to me, I said, you know what? I already got a gig. I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm not going to stay with this thing again, because it probably is not going to go anywhere, and then you're going to drop us you know what I mean? I was had a bad taste in my mouth at that point. But it's so funny because then I joined Y&T as, am I moving too fast for you?
No. You're
Okay.
fine.
So I get called, you know, Y&T is going on the tour with their album In Rock We Trust, I think one of their best albums. And we're going on tour with Twisted Sister and Motley Crue and Heart and Aerosmith and all these bands for, you know, over the next couple of years, opening up. And I'm singing background vocals and riding on the tour bus, living the life, having a good time, getting paid. You know, so I was enjoying that. And then I get a call from Eric Martin and says, "Hey, check it out. I'm going on tour with Tina Turner. I got an album out on Capitol." I mean, you know, I knew he had an album out, and I need a band, and I want you to be the guitar player. And, you know, Tina Turner was huge at that time. I mean, she was like one of the biggest acts, you know, selling out Coliseums. And so I went to the Y&T guys and said, "Hey, I got this offer to play guitar and go on this big tour with Tina Turner with Eric Martin opening up." And they go ahead, man. Your gig's always here. You can come back anytime you want. You know, go ahead, go have fun. So I practiced up for it and was all ready to leave on tour with Eric, and the Tina Turner canceled their tour. So that was the one moment that I almost went back with Eric Martin at that point, you know. But
seems like there's always, you know, like, you know, with everyone I talk to, there's always like that story of like where it's like the carrot stangled and you're always about ready to grab it and then something happens. So when you're with Y&T, you know, throughout the mid 80s, you know, is there ever like, you know, where you and Night Ranger both coming up at the same time, you know, you got the same roots, you played the same clubs, you know, you're both starting from the same spot, and then you see them, like you say, just take off, and you see you know, Eric Martin band demise. Does that ever get to you too? It's like, you know, like that could have been us. Why, you know, wasn't, you know, does that ever play into anything when you see these other bands that you started with and they just take off and yours don't? You know, does that just ever, you know, just linger in your head, or is it something you just push aside and just move on?
Yeah, I never really, I was happy. I'm happy for anybody who makes it, you know, or, you know, gets popular and it works, you know, it's great. You know, I don't ever think like, oh, well, we were just not good enough. I don't think it's not that, but it really does. It comes down to, well, the timing of everything. But, you know, I mean, look at Night Ranger. They're fantastic band, fantastic players, great people, really good songwriters. They had everything going for them, and they deserve what they got. You know, I mean, they deserve to take off. You know, I mean, Y&T story, they were a great band too. They just never had the big million seller. You know, everybody respects them in the business. Everyone thinks they should have been one band that took off and made it and sold big numbers like the Night Ranger. But it doesn't always happen. It just doesn't. And you know that after being in the music business long enough to not don't count your chickens before they hatch kind of attitude. Because even when you think you have the goods, you might not, you know, because Motley Crue's coming along and changing the whole ball game. You know, just when you thought it was all about being like Journey and Night Ranger and Loverboy, they change it, turn it all on its head and start write songs, shout at the devil. Okay, what the heck's that all about? You know, but it worked, you know.
And it definitely like timing. I mean, if that Eric Martin band record had been released, let's just say 2 years earlier, you know, that's a whole different musical climate than exactly what you said. So you know, sometimes it's not just all of the talent, the songs. It's, you could have the talent and you could have the songs, but then you get mixed up with, okay, bam, here's like they said, the tattooed rock stars, and what Twisted Sisters getting real big at that time, and
Yeah.
and it definitely just throws things for a loop. Do you did Y&T and Night Ranger, when you were with Y&T in the mid 80s, did you guys ever share a bill together?
I don't think so. I don't remember.
The only thing I can
We
think
never
of,
toured. No, Night Ranger. They were. Well, I take that back. We did share a bill together. It was a special show. Not to get on a sidetrack, but there was a song that's on my album called "Fly Angel Fly." Was written for this photographer. He's the guy that introduced Herbie Herbert to Mile High back in the day. He was a rock and roll photographer called Randy Bachman from the Bay Area in the 70s. And he got hit by a car taking a photograph in San Francisco. And they asked if I would sing at his funeral. And I wrote him the song. And then anyway, we ended up playing a show at the, what's it called? Oh gosh, it's in San Francisco, right on the Strip, Market Street, like the main. Not
you talking like a venue?
Yeah, big theater.
Mystic.
No, in San Francisco, right?
San Francisco.
What's it? I'm not Waldorf, not Wolfgang's, but
I unfortunately.
Oh gosh, I'm sorry, I just can't remember. It'll come to me. But so Sammy Hagar, Night Ranger, Eddie Money, Y&T, Eric Martin band, or Eric Martin, me. So I played with Y&T. I played with Eric Martin. And so that was one bill we all shared together. So Y&T and Night Ranger was on the same bill that night.
All right. And I know that photographer because I don't own the book, but someone put a book out of all his stuff.
Photo pass.
Yes. And I was reading an article or something about it. So I know the name and a little bit about the book. It's interesting how that ties into the track that we're eventually going to get to. So how does grunge impact your musical career? A lot of these bands are kind of what you kind of goes back to how you were talking about the Eric Martin band, where you're doing all these big shows and living the dream, living the life, and all of a sudden overnight for some of these bands it's gone. Where were you at in your career, and how did grunge impact it at all, like with what you were doing in the early 90s?
Well, by that time that the early 90s came, I was doing my own thing with a resurgence of 415 band. Me and Mark Ross, the original guitar player from Mile High, and I got together and formed a new version of 415 with some other players, and we played some of the tracks that him and I wrote. So we were able to, play Canocti Harbor Resort and open it up to REO Speedwagon and Doobie Brothers, or whatever was going on in the 90s while grunge was coming in. And all those bands were kind of just, they had REO Speedwagon, sure, they had a big enough name to go out and still play, and Doobie Brothers too, but it wasn't like what they're even doing now by any means. I mean, they were just kind of there, and they had their fan base that was dwindling from the 80s, and grunge was taken over. And Y&T, that I was in Y&T up to like 1989, and then I left because it was already starting to slow down anyway, and I was playing guitar in the Greg Kinn band at that point.
Okay. So
which he was just hanging on to by a thread, playing some shows, but that's all we could do. That's all that was left to do. That's whatever we could whatever 80s fans were still hanging and coming to see our shows on a smaller level. And then so I kind of stopped playing guitar at some point. You know, I mean, by the time the mid 90s came, I don't hardly even picked up my guitar. It was kind of a weird period for me. I thought my music career is over. I had a job and making money, so I just was like, yeah, whatever. I mean, I'm in my 40s now, so my life's over. Rock and roll career's over. I'm too old to be in this business. And so it was funny how you think, you know, that at that point, and that's how I was feeling, and I was okay with it. I thought I had my fun. I mean, I played, and I still played guitar, and I was still writing songs here and there and just putting them to the side, not knowing what I'm ever going to do with them. But some of them ended up on my solo album that I wrote in the 90s. But,
this is like the stuff I like, because your story reminds me a lot of David Lauser when we had him on, and drummer for Sammy Hagar. So he gets this big break with Sammy in, you know, the early 80s. For 5 years, they're just all over MTV, touring the world. And then Sammy joins Van Halen and it stops. And I think through like his brother-in-law or something, he basically he's an electrician. So, you know, just right after that, he's an electrician, and people would, you know, they would, you know, have the radio boom box and they would hear Sammy Hagar, like, that's really you? And he's like, yeah. And but he was like, you know, he made that decision of, you know, and he's making good money. He's an electrician, and he's a little bit younger though. He wasn't in quite his 40s. I think he probably would have been probably early 30s at this point. And he had to make the decision, like with his wife, like, I gotta quit. I gotta somehow get back into the music business, because if I'm comfortable, you know, I'm making good money, I'm comfortable. If I don't get out, I'm never going to get out. I got to do it now. So he quit and struggled for a few more years, and eventually found other work. But you know, it kind of mirrors what you say. You hit this point and you still played and wrote your songs and everything. Where does the guitar kind of kick back in your life, and that, you know, drives your career again? What kicked that off?
I'll tell you that in just a second. Just because of what you were saying about Lauser and what happened with him when Sammy Hagar joined Van Halen. That was a change of that. The thing that happened in my life, it was kind of interesting too, like what happened with him going off to be an electrician. When Sammy Hagar joined Van Halen and the whole band lost their job, Bill Church, the bass player, and I started a band on the side. I was in Y&T as a background singer, but we had a side band with the guy Bob Banks in San Francisco, who was in a band called LaRue, used to play Mabuhay Gardens. Anyway, we started this side band. Kevin Carlson from Aldanova, Leonard Hayes on drums, and Bill Church on bass. And anyway, we played a couple shows and we did some recording, but the main thing out of that is that Bill Church came to rehearsal one day and asked me if I wanted to help him build a greenhouse, because he needed to make some money. And a buddy of his had this company offered him, said, if you need pay, you know, he had a mortgage, he had a family, he needed to make money, right? Just like Lauser. So he said, hey, John, would you help me? And I said, I don't know anything about construction. I'm just a guitar player. He goes, yeah, me neither, but I just need to try. So we went out and we ended up at all places. We were building a greenhouse for an orchid flower shop in Mill Valley, which is just down the hill from Sammy Hagar's house. So Sammy Hagar comes to our job in a white Cobra he just bought in Hayward, California, of all places, for $55,000. I remember the story. He comes driving up. He goes, dude, I just got this for $55,000 for some of my Van Halen money. It's $20 million you got to join Van Halen. And he took Bill out in the car, took him for a ride at lunch, came back, gave him a check, a severance pay for thanks for all the years, whatever. And so it was funny to have Sammy come up and see, this greenhouse thing. And this is 1980, was it 6?
Somewhere around there, yeah, 85,
yeah,
86.
86. And so Bill and I, we built a couple more greenhouses, and then he quit. He goes, this is too much work. And I was younger, and I was like, you know what, I'm learning something. So I got this other side gig when I'm not doing Y&T shows. So I'm still building greenhouses to this day, because I wasn't for a while, but medical marijuana has become the biggest rage in the whole United States. You know that. And that's what they need is greenhouses. And I'm the greenhouse expert now. So I'm making so much money now building greenhouses. Whenever I'm not with Y&T, it's just funny. It's like so I finally made it in something.
So it all goes back to Bill Church.
It all goes back to Bill Church. And I've thanked Bill Church over and over. He goes, oh yeah, whatever. I go, dude, you don't know what a change you made in my life monetarily. All these years I've become this expert for this company, the same company that we started with. I'm still with them 35 years later. And now I'm their main guy. I'm not a consultant. I just go out and teach the crews how to do it. But anyway, I just want to tell you that real quick.
That's awesome.
And so I always go, God, thank God that Sammy Hagar joined Van Halen. So I got a real job. So anyway, another sideline that with Sammy Hagar that I was going to tell you about, and we were talking about Gary Peel and Night Ranger Connection, is that before I started doing that construction, I was living with a buddy, and I needed to make some money. And so I ended up doing some construction on somewhere up in Marin County. And like after a couple of weeks of work, and he goes, okay, guys, our next job is we're going to Sammy Hagar's house. And I was just cracking up. I was going, I can't believe I'm going to, 2 weeks working for this guy doing just pounding nails or whatever I'm doing. And now we go up to Sammy Hagar's house. And I the very first day I'm on the job, I sit, he's remodeling his whole house. I mean, it's just the whole full scale remodel. Guys have been on the job for a year or something. And I come in there, just low man on the totem pole, sitting there at lunch. Gary Peel comes walking up the driveway. He has a basket of wine or something he's bringing to Sammy. And he looks over and he sees me and he goes, what are you doing? Hey, John, what are you doing here? And I go, oh, I'm just working, on Sammy's out working here. I got, this job. He goes, I'll tell Sammy you're out here. And so the guys, I'm working for, they all turn around and look at me and they're like, who the hell are you? These guys don't even talk to us. And I go, well, I know him. I'm a musician, they know me. And so anyway, Sammy Hagar comes out of the house. This is after lunch, climbs up the ladder, comes onto the roof. I'm up there like pulling nails out of a board or something, just like grunt work. And he goes, hey, John, Gary told me you're out here. How cool that you ended up, you're working on my house or, whatever. And I go, hey, whatever. And so all the guys are like, I can't believe that Sammy Hagar just came out here and talked to you. It's like, you're just like, who? I go, I'm a musician. He knows who I am. So it was just a funny side note. I thought
I love those stories.
So anyway, back to the Flying Joe Fly thing. I know we're going to get to that, but the song that all these people sang on and played for my friend that passed away. So that concert that I said Night Ranger and Y&T played together on, this came after that point. This is like 1988 when this happened. This is 86 or whenever Sammy was on the roof with me. So I was only at his house that one day working, and then I was sent to another job and, whatever happened. But here we are a couple years later, we played this show for Randy. And that, by the way, that money, we raised $30,000 that night. And that's the money that we put that book out with. All that money went to finance that whole book. And so I'm backstage where they all decide the very last song of the night should be the song Flying to Fly that I wrote for Randy. And so everybody got together around me and I showed them real quick how it went. And I go, well, I need an acoustic guitar. I mean, a guitar to play. And so Sammy Hagar had one, and they said, "Hey, Sammy, do you mind if John uses your guitar to play this last song for at the end of the night?" And he goes, "Oh, absolutely. The dude built my house."
Really, love isn't all that they say. We can't keep up with all the games that girls wanna play. They're up and down and all around. Fusion is hell to me. I'll fall in love. I'll fall in love again. Oh, can't you see that I'm just that crazy to fall in love again?
And there you go. Part 1 of the interview with John Nymann from YNT. Part 2 is even better. We're going to release that in 2 weeks. Next week, we'll do whatever we call Night Ranger news, notes, and minutia. We got Night Ranger playing, over the weekend and everything. And so there'll be a lot of new stuff coming up. So there you go. I will also have a link to where you can get this record.
There we go.
Support some new music.
Damn straight.
Everybody talks about wishing there was new good music, and here it is.
You just have to listen to us. We'll steer you towards it.
Correct. So I don't think I got a card, but if you're out there in YouTube land or Spotify land, wherever you're at, find us on Facebook, just Fans of Motion, Night Ranger. You'll find us. Also, track us down on the Instagram and Twitter. Always putting different stuff on different pages. What else we got? We got Spotify and all that stuff.
All the podcatchers, Pandora, Amazon, Apple Podcasts.
If you are listening to this on
iHeart.
YouTube, subscribe to everything and anything, except to my ex-girlfriend. She has issues, but don't subscribe to it.
Don't they all?
All right. So try the VO. I'm here all week.
All
right. So there you go. First part of John Nymann. So after this, go order the record, crank it up, crank some YNT up, and we will talk to you next week.
Bye.
Later.
It's just tonight for us to share. Be my lover if you dare. I'll show you things that'll make you feel you can believe this love is real. Wait until tomorrow, the time passes away. Don't wait until tomorrow, 'cause wasting your time will never get you made. Get you